I don't know if that maybe it's a cultural thing, but that's certainly the impression that a lot of guys, it's that masculinity, toxic masculinity, I call it. But there's this whole thing, you can't be weak as a man, and I think a lot of it comes down to that. Within that stat that I mentioned, biggest killer of men under 45, there's a little unknown stat within that, in that 33% of those men are new dads. So what is it that's causing young men, young fathers, to want to take their own life?
Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. Ladies, if you want to know what your guy is thinking, this podcast is for women too. Each week, a special guest helps you create that life you've imagined. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships and hot sex. Yeah, you hear me, getting laid more frequently. Other guy vices, and topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to go to www.thestandard.academy/magazine and grab a free copy of our new digital magazine, The Standard Academy, where we talk about erogenous zones, growing hair back, and other things that will help you create that kick-ass life. Now get ready to listen up and share with friends.
This is Orch, the official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and, well, those that they love. And part of that is, well, being a dad. And being a dad is it's an interesting thing these days. It's all sorts of, I think, just there's all sorts of challenges that our dads never faced. I'm sure they had their own challenges, but it's just things just come out of nowhere as being a dad. So today my guest is he's a creator and founder of a podcast and blog called Nobody Cares About Dad. And Marco Carluchi was born and raised in Grantham, Lincolnshire. And growing there gave him an itch to explore the world outside of a small town. So as soon as he could get out on his own, that's exactly what he did. And as a teenage boy growing into manhood with raging hormones, I remember those, it wasn't easy being stuck in one place for too long without any way to release them. What do you mean no way to release them? Holy crap, I had a whole bunch of ways to release them. Anyone around who shared similar feelings about life. Dads around the world have different experiences as they become fathers. And his blog hopes to open up dads' minds and hearts so they can understand one another better across cultures, countries, genders, races, and etc. So welcome, Marco. Welcome to oldguytalkstome.com. And I think we're going to have an interesting conversation about this, about fatherhood and all that. But I'm going to start off with a question with the question I asked all of my guests at the very beginning. And that is, what is the most important thing you've done today?
What, today or just today?
Today, not today. Today.
Today. I'm teaching my little boy to ride his bike.
Okay.
So I picked him up from nursery and I took him out on his Marvel superhero bike. And I'm trying to teach him stabilizers. Of course, he's only 3, but yeah, trying to teach him to ride his bike. It's unusually for me. It's been a really low key day. If you'd have asked me that yesterday or tomorrow, I'd have probably given you a better answer. But yeah, I've basically I've not been at work. I've done no writing. I've done no video. I've literally done nothing.
Okay, so kind of a day off spend with the family. Now, how many kids you got?
Just the one.
Just the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So how did you get into this space? What's the backstory that got you into this space about nobody? And why I'm going to argue with you that lots of people care about dad.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a poor me Oh,
Yeah, do you know what? So yeah, so it started a couple of, so I suppose the background on that is I never grew up with a dad. So I was raised single mother with 4 children. She raises on her own, absolute trooper she was. So I never really understood the dynamics of a relationship with a father, mother dad relationships. I just I never saw it. Obviously you see it from afar with your friends and stuff, but actually experiencing that, it was alien to me. Like I never really understood any of it. So it wasn't until I want to say probably 2 years ago now. It was Christmas Day, and we were around my wife's house, and I was watching as my father-in-law opened his Christmas presents, and you'll probably recognize this standard dad presents. It was a packet of socks and a packet of licorice. Right.
Okay.
Standard dad presents. And I watched him perform this charade to be, I'm so pleased, thank you very much, these are amazing, like, super happy with these, let's face it, rather lame presents, right? So I watched that and I was like, oh, okay. And then I pan across and I watched my mother-in-law open her presents, and it was, oh my, it was a mountain of gifts that the kids had, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And for me, it wasn't the money, that's not it, but it was more the thought they'd put into mum's present over dad's present. It just wasn't comparable at all. And I remember watching that scenario. So I watched dad, yeah, okay, yeah, thanks for that. Watch mother-in-law. And the words that popped into my head were, I said, oh, nobody really cares about dad. And that's what they were, the words that popped in my head. And I always fancied myself as a bit of a blogger, a bit of a writer. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start writing about this. And I started to explore why is it, so obviously my own scenario, why is it so easy for men to just walk out of a relationship, walk away from kids, turn the back on kids? Because for me as a father, my little boy is the most important thing in my life, and when I had him, God, I couldn't imagine walking away from him. So I started to explore that. I started to explore, well, why do men leave? And how is it so easy for them? And in some instances, could it be as simple as they think, well, do you know what, nobody really cares if I'm here or not? So that's how it originally started. So it started with the blog, and it started just exploring why men leave. One of the things I'm really passionate about is male suicide. So that's one of the things I talked about from the start is the biggest killer of men in the UK under 45 is suicide. And so that was, why is that? What is it that young men are struggling with, that they feel like that's the only option to take them to? Sorry,
that's an interesting statistic I've never heard. Is that just I'm curious whether that's true in other countries, or if that's something that's particular to the UK, or maybe even to Europe, because I've never really heard that as a major cause of death, especially here, like in the States. So why do you, what in your research that you've done, why do you think that's the case?
I think a lot of it, and actually exploring the podcast and speaking to a lot of these men, it's clear that a lot of it is, we as men, we have this bravado, don't we? You can't be weak. If you show signs of weakness, you're less of the man. You couldn't dream of coming out to your friends and saying, listen, boys, I'm actually not feeling great today, and I don't understand why, because you'd get laughed at. And it's certainly here in the UK. Yeah.
See, I've just come flat out, hey, I'm feeling like shit today, so you'll know.
Yeah. So I don't know if that, maybe it's a cultural thing, but that's certainly the impression that a lot of guys, it's that masculine, toxic masculinity, I call it. But there's this whole thing, you can't be weak as a man, and I think a lot of it comes down to that. The other within that stat that I mentioned, biggest killer of men under 45, there's a little unknown stat within that, isn't that 33% of those men are new dads. So what is it that's causing young men, young fathers, to want to take their own life? And is it pressure? Is it financial pressure? Is it not feeling like they're important? There's all sorts. I don't have an answer, I suppose, is what I'm going around saying. But I thought, well, look, if in some cases just talking or listening can help somebody, that's why I started doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that whole suicide thing is kind of an interesting thing. So when you are, let's talk about your experience of not growing up as a dad, and I just for clarity, I had a dad, but he didn't really function as a dad.
Okay.
And my mother once in a fit of unbridled honesty told me that she can't think of one thing he did as a dad with me as a child. and so he was not the man who I envisioned myself to be.
Yeah.
In many ways, there's and the people might think, oh, you're just an asshole. You should respect your parents and all that stuff. But no, you got to be realistic. I feel you got to tell the truth about stuff. And so he was not a particularly good role model. The men that I had in my life, some family members, one was really very good, and two of them were fucking pathologically abusive. And so it was I don't know if it was better. I don't know if it would have been better not to have somebody in your life. But what effect on your relationship with your son and how you see fatherhood did the fact that you did not have a father? How's that changed you as a man and as a father?
I guess it's a good question, because what do I have to base it off? Being a pet, what's the benchmark for me? I don't have one. But what I can tell you is that everything that I do is to give my son the opposite experience of what I had. So, not being there for the first football game, not taking him to his first football game, not being there for when he walks, everything all these little things mean so. Like, when I was becoming a dad, there was 3 things that I said that were so important I wanted to do, and they may seem really silly to other people, but the first one was take him to his first soccer match, take him for his first pint, and watch him get married. They're the 3 things that I want to do.
What was the second thing? I didn't catch the second thing.
Take him for his first pint at 18.
Oh, okay. A pint. Okay, pint. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, they're like the 3, and not huge. And so this summer, I did the first one. So I took him to his first football match, took him to the stadium, took him to Manchester United. And that was, for me, was just such an amazing day. Mm-hmm. He'll never understand how amazing that was.
He won't remember it. Yeah, he won't
remember it. But even looking back, he will never understand how important that was for me to be able to do.
Yeah. So, okay, so you got those are some big events. Tell me, in the day-to-day, and we actually hadn't talked. Are you married at this point? Or
yeah.
Okay, so in the day-to-day, how do you act as a father with your son?
I try to be. So we talk a lot on the podcast about fathers being not only present but involved. Mm-hmm. So everyone, loads of dads are there, but are they sat on their phone, flicking through Facebook or the news, or are they playing computer games? We have a policy in my house now where when we're in the front room, all the phones go in the top cupboard, in the top drawer. So when we're in the room and we're in with especially with Leo, he has our full attention. So we're not looking on we're not flicking through. So yeah, I just try to be present. I try to be present in everything he does. I always try to say yes to him, not in when he's asking for toys or gifts, but if he wants me to play with him, if he wants me to take him outside to play football, those sort of things. I'll always, even if I'm tired, I'll try to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's important. Yeah. That was one of the things that I really worked on. I did not want to be another version of my father with my kids. And it was a lot. It had to do a lot with being involved in the things that they did.
Yeah.
On a regular basis, and at the same time, not becoming my kids' friends.
Yeah.
Because a lot of parents make that mistake of they want to become friends with their kids.
Yeah.
And that does not turn out well for most people.
But you need clear boundaries, I think. Yeah, there has to be clear boundaries.
Right. Yeah. You have to. That's one of your jobs, is to set up boundaries so that they understand how to function in society.
Yeah, of course. But I think, speaking to a lot of guys that I have, it's many of the guys that I've had on have had similar, not I don't want to say problems with their dad, because their dads were there, they did everything, they supported, but they didn't have that. They weren't as emotionally available, I think, as people are today. I think nowadays times have changed where it's becoming more acceptable for men to be more emotionally available. And yeah, I think it's so growing up with a lot of the guys, speaking to a lot of the guys on the podcast, they had similar experiences like you've mentioned. Your dad, maybe your dad wasn't around, he wasn't involved as much, and they've gone, do you know what, I don't want to do that with my kids, and for my kids I need to be better. So they're using what happened to them as a child, the experiences they didn't have, and saying that's not happening for me. Yeah.
That was it was kind of interesting. My wife said when she met my family, she goes like, "How did you turn out to be normal?" She said it was quite the miracle. So so you have the son who's 3 years old and going to be getting into stuff. What do you think is different being a father today than, let's say, 20 years ago?
I think, like maybe how I just mentioned, I think gender roles have changed. Maybe you'd be able to tell me a bit better than myself. But yeah, I think gender roles have certainly changed. Whereas, and again, I'm only speaking from my experience, but the way that fathers, or the way that the relationship, I see it from listening to people used to work was, dad go to work, mum would look after the home. Dad, certainly in this country, goes to work, goes to the pub. That was sort of how it was, and mum was left there to raise the children, do everything with the kids whilst dad did his thing. And I see that. I certainly couldn't do that with my wife. My wife would never allow that. So my wife works. So I think the gender roles have certainly changed, and like I mentioned just previously, I think men today are more emotionally available, and I think that plays a big part in the way we are with our children today, compared to previously.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that's probably a turn for the good for the most part. But I think that also what is, in your opinion, I was just thinking about this. What does it mean to be a man and to teach a young boy how to be a man?
Wow. I don't know. I don't even know if we can we teach them to be a man? I think you have to let your kids be kids, right? You have to let them make their own mistakes and find their own way, but be there for them. I don't know. I guess what can I teach my son? Well, I can teach him that he needs to treat people with respect. I can teach him that he has to have a work ethic. He has to work hard, work for everything that you get. I can teach him that. Aside from that, I don't know. I don't know what else I could teach.
Yeah. Well, I think the work ethic is real important. Making kids earn stuff.
Yeah.
I know that the challenge is that in society now, and I don't know what your perspective is on this, but I believe that there's a war on masculinity.
Sure.
That's being viewed as something bad, when it's actually, I view it as God's gift to me and to my family.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the word masculinity and some of the things that are quote unquote attributed to it. And for boys now, they are, I think a lot of times, I don't know if it's true in the UK, but here in the States, if you are a young boy who's an extrovert, you get labeled. You get labeled at school real fast.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden people want to start giving you drugs to control your behavior.
Yeah, ADHD and all that sort of stuff.
There's more. All of a sudden, all boys that are extroverts have ADHD, and I don't believe that's true. I just think, I mean, you could give the whole school lithium and everybody be real comfortable, and everybody be real calm. But that's not life, and that's not living, and that's not being able to accomplish things. I think part of the thing, and this is just not a masculine thing. It's just for people in general, is that we, to a certain extent, are designed to accomplish and grow, to be better versions of ourselves today than we were yesterday. And you can't do that in a passive environment. That doesn't happen passively.
No, but you are right. There is an attack on masculinity. I watch and read a lot of Jordan Peterson. I think he's
absolutely
fantastic. He's fantastic. And he had a right ding dong with a reporter here for Channel 4 News. You've probably seen it online, where she's just trying to trip him up every step about the gender pay gap, and he's just like, he's hitting her with facts, and she couldn't deal with it. She just couldn't cope with him.
Yeah, because it was she was dealing with feelings and he's dealing with facts.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's a big problem. I think feelings are important. I think they're very important. It's why we want things for the feelings we get by you want that car, not because of that car, but you want a car because of the feeling you get from having that car.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to poo-poo feelings, but your feelings don't trump facts.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that are out there right now in where we're supposed to that people are supposed to dispense with reality.
Yeah, well, his big one is biology, right?
Oh,
so funnily enough, we were literally just recording. So we have the podcast, which Nobody Cares About Dad podcast. And we've also recently started doing Dad Reacts. So Dad reacts to certain things and certain situations that happen. And one of the ones we were literally just talking about was Leah Thomas, the NCAA swimmer. And we were sort of just talking about that and about gender and all that sort of stuff.
With the Photoshop picture on a magazine cover to make her look more
feminine.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting topic. I in my podcast a few episodes ago, I interviewed by a gentleman by the name of Scott Howell. He's a PhD, MD, really off the charts smart. And my thing when I interview him, I've had him on several times on my podcast, is I have to get him to use smaller words. I guess he just starts talking like he's like, okay, Scott, no one understands what the fuck you're saying. Let's bring it down to 8th grade level.
Do you need accountability? Are you looking to change the course of your life but have failed to keep on track? Too often we take in information and fail to act. Do you need an accountability program to stay the course? Then go to www.thestandard.academy and find out about my accountability program that goes with my course that helps you find out what you want, why you want it, and how to get it. The accountability program keeps you on track to get results.
But we did an interview about trans athletes, and this was at the time not the swimmer, but the New Zealand powerlifter.
Laurel, is it?
Whatever.
Laurel
Yeah.
Hubbard. Laurel
Yeah.
Hubbard, I think it's called.
So we were talking about that, and he helped author the USA Powerlifting Association position paper on trans athletes.
Okay.
And it was all based on science. And one of the authors got his tenure removed out of college because of that. But basically, it is clear that a XY born in XY, who, especially if they transition later in life, retain many of those advantages of being a male. And it's irrespective of, and the big thing ever goes like, oh, well, there's testosterone levels are the same.
Yeah.
Well, that is to a certain extent, that's irrelevant, because a XY processes testosterone very differently than a double X.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden their hand size doesn't shrink.
Yeah.
They have more fast twitch muscle fibers, more neurons, greater bone density, all these things that don't vanish.
Well, they're talking about with Leah. She's 6'1", she's got bigger hands, bigger feet, bigger muscles than all the competition that she's fighting against. Now, the argument back is that, well, she's now currently performing at 15 seconds slower than she was as a man. And you're like, yeah, I understand that. But as a man, she was already levels above the women anyway. So she's just coming down to a level that's slightly better than the women now.
Yeah. Well, there's a litigation. I don't know whatever happened to it, but it was a high school runners, I think mile or whatever. And they said it was in this particular state, I think it was Connecticut, that 25% of the boys in high school that ran that race ran faster than the girls' high school record.
Yeah.
25%, a quarter of the boys ran faster than the fastest girl in the state.
Yeah.
And, I just think, I think that actually this has been a great thing because the swimming thing has brought it really to full light.
Yeah.
And it may be the thing that saves women's sports. Because if you have all of these athletes going into all these, male who become trans, going into women's sports.
Yeah.
You could grow huge tits on LeBron James. And, you give him estrogen. You imagine, freaking D cups.
Yeah.
But you could grow huge tits and give him enough estrogen and all that other stuff and blah blah blah. But he's still going to be the best basketball player in the WNBA. He's going to be by far. It's not going to affect. It's not going to affect his ability to jump and things like that. And that's kind of an interesting thing, because I have my daughters. One played basketball, and my youngest played all through high school. And it was very interesting is that up until about 12 or 13, the game was the same for boys and girls.
Yeah.
But as soon as the boys get testosterone, the boys' game became vertical.
Yeah.
I would say 99%, if not 100% of the players in the NBA can dunk the ball with two hands. Yeah. I don't care if they're 6 feet or 7'4", but they can do it. That's not the case in WNBA.
No.
And so that's just like, that was like a real obvious, like, don't you see the difference?
Yeah, it's funny because here, soccer, sorry, my friend's girl plays. She's 9, and they play multi-gender. So they play against. So the girls' team play against the boys.
Right.
They get beat 12, 11, 13-0 every week.
Really? Yeah. See, my daughter played with the basketball team. She played club ball, but this is a particularly good. But and these girls were also, they're all just like prissy, and they had their hair done and their nails done and everything else. And then as soon as they got on the court, they like personality changes.
Yeah,
and they're incredibly aggressive. And boys, they would actually play boys teams, and the boys would lose too. And it was actually kind of funny to watch. And then that as I said, as the boys started to get their testosterone going and things like that really changed. Yeah. So how when you are looking at these things, like the whole masculinity thing, how do you guard your son from being, how should I say, indoctrinated? Because there's a certain attempt to indoctrinate children, and we just had, I don't know if you're familiar with the law in Florida that just got passed, that basically you can't, from kindergarten to the third grade, they don't want teachers talking to kids about sex.
Right.
Like, why would you be talking to a kindergarten about sex?
Yeah. I think we were like 16 at school when they first introduced that.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to find out soon enough, but I think it's a, or sexual orientation.
Do you know what? I don't know, and I've had stick for what I'm about to say on my podcast and my blog. But my little boy came back from nursery with his nails painted recently, and I'm like, no, like you shouldn't be painting boys' nails with glittery nail polish. So I went in and I said to him, you don't do that. You don't do. He's a boy. Sorry, he is. And boys don't do that. And that's my view on it. And
so what did the person say that did that?
Oh no, they were apologetic, and they said, oh, sorry, we didn't realize, and we thought it'd be okay. I was like, well, it's not okay, And I'll be honest, even if I had a daughter coming home at 3 years old with her nails painted, I still wouldn't like that.
Yeah. So it's a interesting phenomenon. It's a interesting phenomenon. The whole thing of masculinity and toxic masculinity and all that, I think is, there are men who have toxic personalities, and there's women that have toxic personalities.
Sure.
Some men are called assholes, and women are called bitches.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not denying that there aren't. I mean, there are toxic personalities.
Yeah, of course.
I certainly have run into them. So as this whole thing, when do you see yourself kind of letting go of your kids, of your son, and letting them out into the world?
I don't know. As soon as he's old enough. I mean, for me, I played at 9 years old. I used to live in one town that was, the two towns are 30 miles apart. At 9 years old, I used to have to go and get the train on my own to go and play for the local. So I played for Peterborough United, which is a professional football club, as a kid. No adult. I'd catch a train on my own, 9 years old. Someone would pick me up at the train station, but I'd have to go to the train, get the train on my own. It's hard to envisage like people nowadays letting their 9-year-olds travel like that. But I don't know. I think so. My wife and myself are very different on this. So, but I think because I've grown up having to be very independent, I feel like I would also try to let him be. But my wife would have a completely different view on that.
Sure. I can see that. What do you think is the for fathers? What would you say is some of the biggest challenges that they face today in raising kids, both boys and girls?
I think, without going over it again, I think that the toxic masculinity is a problem. But the perception of toxic masculinity is a problem, and I think we're at the very start of that race. I think that's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, unfortunately. The other problem I see a lot of, maybe it's just the nature of my podcast, but single dads. So fathers that have left the family home, it is a real challenge to have any rights over your kids, visitations, parental rights. Raising a child as a single dad without the custody is a huge challenge, and something that needs to be changed, I think, in the eyes. I don't know what changes here, but like we talked recently about a number of cases here in the UK where children 5 and 3, I think the last 2, were killed by their mother and the new stepfather, beaten to death, shook to death. Awful. In both cases, the father spotted abuse with the child and reported it to social services. In both cases, absolutely nothing was done about it. So and then the children end up being murdered by the parents. So as a father, you sat there with absolutely zero rights, zero course of action, and you're having to watch as that happens to your kid. I think it's criminal. I think that so I think the fact that men lose any parental right once they leave the home, I think is shocking.
Yeah, it's a little bit different here in the States, but not that much different. Generally, the courts do lean towards the mother in that situation here in the States also. What do you see as things that, let's say, you're talking to yourself, Marco, and Marco says, okay, I need to change this about myself in terms of me being a father. Tell me 3 things that you think you'd need to change about being a father.
I can be a bit of a pushover with. So I went into parenting thinking I'd be the strict one, my wife would be the soft touch. It's completely the opposite way around, completely. So I'd probably changed that. What else? I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. So I've gone through somewhat of a change. So when Leo was first born, I used to work for this company, and I would work away 2 or 3 times a week. When I would be I was the dad I talked about earlier, when I was present but I wasn't involved. You know, that was the father I was originally. And then 2 years ago I set up my own business, and I was there a lot more. You know, I was at home all the time. I wasn't going away. I wasn't traveling for work, and I started to become that father that I wanted to be, but I wasn't being. And I noticed through that my relationship with my son blossomed and grew on the back of being not only present but being involved. So I guess one of the changes I've already made, but a third one, I don't know. I couldn't think of a third one. What about yourself? Having been through, you've completed it, right? So you've completed being a father.
You're never complete being a father.
No, I know, of course, but yeah, you know, what would be the 3 things that you would have changed?
I think I would have probably. There aren't really a lot of things that I would have changed because I did things the way I wanted to do them. I was fortunately in a position where I could do that.
Yeah.
With my career, that I was actually had a lot of control over my time. So I was actually very much involved with my kids. I think probably I wish I'd kept more in touch with them when they were in college. And but now we are now more they live in different cities than we do, but I actually once a month I have a Zoom happy hour with my kids, and so that allows us to keep track. And we talk weekly, but that's just father-daughter time. Is once a month, and we do it over Zoom, and I have a cocktail, I have a cigar, and we chit chat.
Do you see it? So you parented 20. You asked me about 20 years ago. You parented 20 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how do you see it being different today, if you were to be a father, than it would have been previously?
I think the advent of this damn thing. And for those of you that are listening, I've got my fucking iPhone. It's the blessing and the curse.
Okay.
There is so much going on in terms of cyber bullying, and I'm not a big fan of quote unquote. I think kids should be able to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when people go like, oh, we have a zero bullying policy and all this stuff, like, sometimes that bully needs a punch in the face.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes the kid has to be able to defend themselves. And I just recently had somebody on who he and his wife teach mixed martial arts, and they have a problem with the schools because the school has a zero fighting policy. So that means that even if you are being hit and attacked, you can't defend yourself. Now, that just makes absolutely no sense to me at all. And all it does is it creates a victim status for the kid that's being beat up, and promotes, basically encourages bad behavior on the bully.
Yeah. I tell my little lad now, he comes home, oh, so-and-so hit me. I'm like, well, if he hits you, you hit him back.
Yeah, exactly. and so don't become anybody's punching bag. But I think that we were just at the beginning of this, not the beginning, but where things started happening that we never experienced as children, or even sexting. That was like what the fuck is that? And the first time I heard that,
did you say sexting?
Yeah, sexting.
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't even, like, first time I heard that, like, what is that? That was like 8 years ago. And it's kind of like, and those kind of things that are out there. And so these are challenges that there's kids think that, they're invisible when they're really not.
Yeah.
I'm so glad there was not an iPhone with a video camera to follow me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so glad. Yeah. I remember, and I remember thinking about this when John McEnroe, you know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember, and he was like just throwing a temper tantrum, and, got caught on video and everything. And I was just thinking to myself, and that was like 20, 30 years ago. I'm going like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have a video camera following me. I'm so glad because it's like it's there for eternity. So I think that the challenges of those type of things, where kids are pushing each other's, they're pushing each other's boundaries. And I have, yeah, I have my daughters really hate this now. They used to think it's funny, but so I have some rules of life, and rule number 3 is that all boys lie. The better they want something, the more they want something, the better they lie. Okay. And the first lie a girl will hear is, "I'll love you forever." Yeah. And then the next one is, "I'll never tell anyone."
Yeah. I won't show anyone.
Yeah, I won't show it. Just share that picture with me, and I won't share it with anyone. Yeah.
Lads, absolutely.
Look at this. Yeah, absolutely they will. And and it's unfortunate that because that kind of stuff all of a sudden goes around. It's around the school. It's it's easily a mass distribute, and this and that. And next thing you know, there's a bunch of kids that are in trouble because of it.
Yeah, I was growing up, so I left school in 2001. So obviously we had mobiles, but the camera quality and things like that wasn't great when I was sort of causing mischief up until about 21. Right. so I sort of escaped really any trouble in that regard. But nowadays, and also so when I was at school, like at 16, people weren't having sex. Like I think I remember one person in our year had sex, one couple, and everyone was like, wow, like what's going on? God, everyone's losing their mind. But society has become so sexualized, and kids have become, not say kids, but young people have become so sexualized that now at 15, 14, it's become fairly normal for children. They are children. To have sex. I covered a story yesterday on a 21-year-old school teacher who had sex, a female who had sex with a 15-year-old schoolboy 2 times, and she escaped jail. And it was like, double standards here. Like, that was a man having sex with a 15-year-old girl. But we had it. We had a famous footballer here in the UK. You guys probably never heard of him, a soccer player. I always remember to say I was speaking to you guys. He was called Adam Johnson, and he was 28. he had sexual contact with a 15-year-old. No sex, just sexual contact with a 15-year-old. He got 5 years in prison. Right? Yeah. This is the same scenario, but with a female having sex with a male.
Oh yeah.
In my mind, it's worse. She got a 12-month suspended sentence.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
No, I totally get it. So Marco, tell us what do you see for your future, and because you mentioned you got another deal going, and you could nobody cares about Dad. What do you see? Where do you see that going? And then you had what's the other site you had?
No, nobody cares about Dad. It's nobody cares about Dad's podcast, and then nobody cares about Dad Reacts, and that's just that. So like the podcast, the main channel on YouTube, I think we're at just under 4,000. That's grown to 4,000 subscribers over the past 12 months. We're averaging about 4,000 or 5,000 views per podcast. And you know what, like that, it really doesn't bother me. Like it genuinely doesn't. Like when I first started, I was like, I had 100 subscribers and I was getting like 150, 250 views, and I was like counting every single view, reading every comment. And then I just got to the point where I was like, what am I doing? Like, why do I care? I don't care. And when I stopped caring, it started to grow. It started to grow bigger. And then so we were putting the nobody cares about Dad the Dad Reacts, that's what I call it. It's a Dad Reacts to a news story, a football match, whatever. And I was starting to put them on my main channel, but then my podcasts were starting to get lost because we do more Dad Reacts stuff because it's quick, it's easy. So my podcasts were starting to get lost within that. But
with all the content,
yeah. So but they would still get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 views, and I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna create a new channel. I created it yesterday, right? So we're on 7 subscribers or something like that, and I'm putting out videos that are getting 20 views. I'm like, yeah, sweet, like cool. I'm just like, I actually feel better about splitting it up, starting again, because the journey is always better than the arrival lounge, right? So I enjoyed the build. I enjoyed the building, the when nobody's listening, when 10, 15 people listening and engaged, than 10,000 people that aren't engaged. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I'm just enjoying being creative. I'm writing a novel at the moment. So I'm spending a lot of time doing that. I'm trying to chuck out a blog a week on my blog. And yeah, I'm just having a bit of fun creating. I say creating, I'm just talking nonsense down the video. So I'm just enjoying doing it. And I set out with the intention that if we could help one person, then we've done our job. And you know what, I can honestly say that we've helped way more than one. But the messages that I get direct from men that have listened to something on the podcast, listened to an experience that other dads have gone through, and say that that's helped them, then I've done everything that I've already set out to do. Everything I do now is just a bonus.
No, well, good for you. Good for you. Well, Marco, I want to thank you for coming on oldguytalkstome.com.
No, I appreciate you.
And they can find you at nobodycaresaboutdad.com. And
Nobody cares about that. Yeah.
And you got your blog and your podcast, a whole bunch of other stuff on there. It's a very nice site. I'd encourage my listeners to go there and take a look at it.
Please do.
and enjoy our conversation. This is Oris, the official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com. I want you to do several things before you leave. I want you to basically I want you to subscribe, share, rate, and review. And if you write me a bad review, that's fine. Actually, if you're kind of a rabid bad reviewer, like a troll, write a whole bunch of them. I just love a whole bunch of bad reviews. Maybe I'll send you a mug or a T-shirt or something as a thank you, because those bad reviews are just as good as the good reviews, maybe even better. So until next time, remember. Oh, last thing, you got to sign up for my magazine, my digital magazine, at the standard.academy/magazine. And there's stuff there to help you create a kick-ass life for yourself, including how to touch a woman and getting rid of man boobs. So until next time.
Thank you for joining Dr. Orist and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2. Share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3. Leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day.